Greetings, sentient beings. I thank you for taking the time to check out my channel. One night many years ago, I watched a blizzard raging outside my window. That window was 3 layers of tempered glass with argon gas as an insulator between each layer. I heard the wind rage and watched a tree branch snap under the weight of the snow and the stress of the wind. Having had a point in my life when I had been previously homeless, I felt very grateful that I could feel secure that my family would be safe and warm through the night, no matter how bad the storm got. Introspections that night resulted in the poem at the end of this piece, and later to the short essay I present here. So I asked the kind traveler to consider this. Virtually every religion and human culture has a celebration of light near this time of year. That begs the question, why is this so universal, even across groups of humans who had no contact with each other? It is because, at its root, this is one holiday that was not arbitrarily created. This is not a random date on the calendar. Clearly, different cultures and tribes dedicated it to different deities. But even if you believe in no deity at all, there is a natural event here which pulls at our most basic instincts. The winter solstice, also known as Yule, falls on December 21st. This is the longest night of the year. In its most basic form, this holiday is just an observance of the seasons changing because of the position and tilt of our planet relative to the sun. Even before our ancestors understood why this was happening, they realized this marked the night when the world begins to climb out of the darkness. The new day would be slightly longer than the day before it, and each day beyond would grow with slightly more daylight. Until our current calendar was adopted, this was the night celebrated as the birth of the new year. I think that much of why people are now confused about this, about the meaning of this holiday, is that our modern society, with all its conveniences, has insulated us, even isolated us, from the world as our ancestors experienced it. Try to imagine yourself living as our ancestors did, say 1,000 years ago. There was no electricity, no light bulbs or flashlights. At best, they had a small number of candles they made themselves from rendering animal fat. They did not live in the type of houses we know. Families huddled together for warmth in drafty one-room huts. The floors were mud, and the only insulation was the snow on the roof, which produced constant drips inside as it melted. The garage where you keep your car would seem luxurious by comparison. Any village with more than about 100 people would have been called a city. You knew everyone by name, and were probably related to all of them within a couple of generations. We also knew it was unlikely we would all survive the winter. Odds were strong that some in the village would succumb to the cold and weather, and not have the strength to hold on until spring. Even if by some miracle all our people survived, how many of our animals could we keep alive? Would there be enough feed for the cows? Would there be enough food for us that we would not have to eat the last milk cow? If on the winter solstice more than half of the food you had stored was still intact, then you could begin to believe that your family would not starve before spring came. 1,000 years ago, we all lived with death as a certainty. It was just a matter of who and how many would perish this winter. So on the longest night of the year, the time of greatest darkness, we celebrate light and life. For our ancestors, this was nothing less than a defiance of death. With blazing fires, they declared they would not let the darkness take them. With torches to drive back the shadows and voices raised in song, they marched from house to house, those having a bit extra sharing it with those who were running short. This is where the tradition of staying awake all night on New Year's Eve came from. If you could stay awake all night on the longest night of the year, you could do it at any time. Staying awake not just until midnight. They had no clocks to measure the hours at night. But staying awake until you could see the first rays of the sun over the hills. If you had trekked through the longest night of the year, If you had faced the worst the darkness could bring, and came to stand victorious in the morning light with your fires still burning, then you had proven to the demons of the night that you could outlast them. Each year on the night of the winter solstice, it is my personal ritual to keep a flame burning from sunset until sunrise. Even if it is only a single candle, to keep a light glowing through the longest night of the year, a beacon to any who might be wandering lost. Some of my ancestors lived in Lapland, north of the Arctic Circle, where it literally went several weeks before they saw sunrise. I am glad I never have had to endure more than a single night. You may not want to think it. I know it sounds appalling. But we must hold back the darkness, or death will come a-calling. If we can hold back the darkness with a single candlelight, we can make it through the winter. There are greener times in sight. If we can hold back the winter, if we can keep a fire burning, we can make it through the cold. Soon the sun will be returning. If we can hold back the cold with a fire warm and bright, we can celebrate our lives on winter's longest night. If we can hold back the snow and the storms that rage outside, the days start getting longer, the darkness will subside. If we can hold back the darkness, if we can face all that we fear, we can make it through the winter. Spring is almost here. I appreciate your indulging me with these several minutes of your time. I hope this has proven at least an entertaining distraction. Most of all, I hope that something I have said may prompt you to think for yourself.